Hey everybody, it's Lance Dawson. I'm back in the studio with my main amigo, Andrew Stewart, for another episode of Backstage Lowdown. Today we have Canadian superstar luthier Grit Laskin. And Grit is not only a fantastic guitar builder, he's also a musician and artist in his own right, and now has become a triple threat by writing a novel, a mystery action thriller type of novel, and utilizing all his knowledge about building amazing guitars and the Canadian luthier system. Anyway, it's a fantastic book. We've got him in studio today, and both Andrew and I are super excited to talk to him not only about his book but about his world famous guitars and yeah, who knows what else we'll get into, but the book is fantastic. The story's great, and we're hoping that you'll check it out after you hear Grit Laskin in person here on Backstage Lowdown. Anyway, before I head into the studio, I just want to remind everybody that this episode is sponsored by Look Digital Marketing. From stunning websites to full service digital marketing, they help your business shine online. See the difference with Look Digital Marketing. Visit lookmarketing.ca today. All right, everybody, in the studio, Backstage Lowdown, Grit Laskin, Andrew Stewart, and, yours truly. Here we go. Look at
Gotcha.
this is three guys born in the 1900s trying to figure out technology. That's what this is.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
everybody under 30 is laughing at this point.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. But I know how to use a dial phone. You see,
Yeah.
Yes.
it's an incredible skill.
And if it all goes down, Grit, we also know how to use maps.
There you go. That's right. Or write with a pen on
Yeah.
this flat white stuff called paper. You
Yes.
know?
Last night, you being a great songwriter and artist in your own right, you're probably familiar with Jason Isbell.
Yes.
Okay, so last night, Andrew and I were at the concert down in Niagara Falls seeing the 400 unit, and I was there with my 23-year-old son. And going into the OLG venue, there's these three guys that are roughly in our age group,
Mhm.
maybe a little older, but anyway, one of them was fiddling with his phone. He was having problems doing something, and one of them turned around and he said, "Hey, why don't you ask the young guy back here? He'll fix you up and get your phone going for sure."
Yeah.
And so he turned around, and Ben, my son, just said, "Yeah, here, give me your phone, man. I'll fix it." I'm like, "Hey, he could have been talking to me. You don't know
No, no,
that he
he
was
was
talking."
not.
And
He was
then
not
his
talking to
buddy,
you, Lance.
no, one of the old guys turned around and said, "Yeah, buddy, no, we're not. We're talking to this guy." So
Yeah. I know it's so true but of course the young people they've grown up with the digital world, and
Yeah.
we straddle the both. We've seen the other, and so anyway. But you're right. Every time a friend or family member has a new baby, I said, well, give them at least 6 months before you ask them to fix your computer. Okay, you know, or
yeah.
let them at least have their milk before they fix the
Right.
computer. You know.
I
That
love
is
it.
fair. That is fair. And then also, of course, Ben would get ID'd around the casino, and I'd always whip my ID out too. And they're like, "Yeah, buddy, you're good.
We don't
Never
need to see
mind."
that.
I know it's awful. Anyway, great. It's good to have you here, buddy. We were just Andrew and I were just talking about in your intro saying you've got this book and you're an amazing luthier and a musician in your own right. So it's a real triple threat. So we appreciate you taking the time to hang with us today for a little bit.
I appreciate your interest, absolutely. And I want to apologize for missing it a month ago.
No problem at all. It happens.
You
It
know,
happens.
I got a new talk about being old fashioned. I have my appointment book in a little paper thing, and I write
Yep.
all the dates on the weekly calendar, right?
Right.
And I got a new one, and suddenly it starts the week on Monday, not
Oh,
on Sunday. So I had you guys down in the second slot because my old one, that was Monday. And of course, I look at it and I go, oh, yeah, the interview's Tuesday, right? So I'm all ready for it. And then I find out, no, it was yesterday and I blew it. So anyway, I
that's
apologize.
okay.
Now, for
Not a
those just
problem.
tuning in, we're talking about a thing called a day planner,
Yeah, yeah.
and that was the predecessor to that, of course, were the tablets that Moses carried down. So then we went to
Yeah,
the
yeah.
day planner.
Yeah. I gave up tablets some years ago. Yeah.
Well, they're unyieldy to carry, so that's fantastic. Great. You and I have a common amigo in life. A really good friend of mine, Mark Stutman, was telling me that you've been quite a mentor to him and his guitar journey in making
Yeah,
guitars
sure.
and becoming the Gibson guy. So, um,
Yep.
yeah, it was great to touch base with him as well. So tell us a little bit about this book. Like where did you have time in the world of building these, and don't be modest. You build guitars that are famous. People you've got lined up for they take years to get their guitar made by you. And in
Yeah.
the meantime, I'm assuming you're still, writing or performing, get out and play a guitar yourself once in a while. Where does one find the time
Yeah.
to write a book?
Well, it's all extracurricular for me.
Right.
As many evenings as I can get, and Sundays, until I started writing the fiction more fully. I used to work 6 days a week. I had one day off on Saturday. That was it. And for 25 years, I had a record company that I ran with another partner, Borealis Records. And so I had to go in the office one day a week at least. And other than that, it was working nighttime. That's when I would do contracts and correspondence and blah, blah, blah. For me, it was a labor of love. It was never part of my income. But there were other people, there were staff. Anyway, I no longer have the record company, but for 25 years, while we were running Borealis Records, I had this idea for the Strad formula, for the book we're talking about.
Okay.
Because I had published, I guess you'd call it a young adult novel in the mid-90s sort of thing,
Yes.
right about the time we started Borealis Records. And so I had this other idea, but my extracurricular time was gone. When you're running a record company, even when it's a labor of love and I wasn't taking any income from it, it still took 20 hours a week at least.
Right. So you're building guitars at the same time.
Yeah.
That's what's floating the boat.
5 days a week in the shop, one day in the office, and nighttime work. And that's how I did it. But then when we finally, my partner, Bill Garrett, and I transferred everything to True North Records, who we'd been working with for 13 years, we distributed together, we manufactured together. So it was just a matter of passing along the contracts and a little bit of money transferred. And but that just cleared our debts. Our accountant was very excited. You're in a niche of the music biz, but you're leaving clean. He was so happy for us.
Never happens.
Leaving debt behind for all your artists to somehow deal with, right?
Anyway, but this gave you extra time to write then.
And that's my point. Sorry, long way of getting to answer the question, which is exactly that. Yes. So now I had my evenings and this idea that had been percolating for a quarter of a century. And I'm talking about literally, I rewrote the opening chapter in my head at least 3 times. And I'd slowly doing research, speaking to experts I needed to talk to. And finally I said, you know what? I got to do it. I'm going to take a week out of the shop, make the last phone calls to pick the brains I needed to pick, and then just start writing and see what happens. And 5 months later, there was a first draft.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, for your character development, would you go and write backgrounds to each of those characters before you started to put them into the story, really to kind of give you a feel of how they might respond in certain situations? Or did you just start putting pen to paper right away?
No, you have to do what you just described.
Yeah.
You've got to think through roughly what your ultimate destination for the plot and certain ways it's going to start. And you really need to know your characters. In a way, a novelist needs to know their characters better than they know themselves, because you must know what pushes them to say what they say, to act the way they do. What's their motivation?
Yeah.
So you have to figure out who these people are. Yes, I keep a book now, especially because I've started a series. I have 2 more novels written that's beginning a series. And I actually did borrow 2 characters from the Strad formula that I've brought over. But now I have a separate book that is my characters and all the qualities I've given them, or new ideas, new things that happened to them in this story, but could affect how they react in other times. So yes, you really do have to know. Otherwise, you could get in a situation, you may have heard some authors saying, you know, geez, suddenly I backed myself into a corner. What am I going to do now?
Yeah.
And what they
Right.
mean is they started off giving their characters certain qualities, and then they get to a point in the story where they need that character to do X. But X, which is critical for the plot, is not something a person with those qualities would do. So then they think, oh
Yeah.
God, what do I do? Do I go back and rewrite him? Or, you know, and so you have to be so careful that your characters are acting in character, that they're not speaking in a way that suits your story. But that kind of person would never say that, you know, come
Yeah.
on, you know, you don't
No,
want the
exactly.
reader to look at the page and think, oh, give me a break. You know, there's no way she would ever do that. Right.
Kind of
Anyway,
explains why it takes so long to write a novel or a good one anyway, where
yeah.
you're trying to make things all make sense as you go along. And then of course just trying to unfold a story in an interesting manner. And then um I can only apply this like when I write songs, it's economics of words. You don't want to be
Mhm.
extraneous when you don't have to be. So there's so many things. It sounds like you're just keeping your eye on a lot of different things at the same time.
You are. It is true. And sometimes it can drive you a little nuts when you're trying to deal with other things in your normal life. But you've got all this stuff running through your head, and you're carrying the characters and the story all the time. And you're thinking of every aspect all the time. And but you know, on one hand, that's the fun.
Yeah.
Really, you know, because you can write anything. You can invent, you know, as long as it's in the context of the characters and the plot, as you've decided already, then you can go anywhere. In fact, I'll give you just one short anecdote related to that. There was one point when I was writing one of the other novels that's written but not published yet, and all of a sudden, in the middle of a scene, an idea popped into my head that wasn't there 10 seconds ago. And I immediately write it down. And then I go back from my pad and I write longhand. My first draft's always longhand. We can talk about that. Anyway, I looked down at the pad and I went, holy shit, what just happened? You know, and I'm the one who thought of it. And it took me totally by surprise that this idea popped into my head. And look what it did to the story. Whoa, incredible. Last thing I'll say, which is still, this is such a long, sorry, you know, I'm verbose, right?
That's
It's
okay.
okay.
Stop me anytime, but I think I'm still
Don't you worry.
answering
Just
the
keep on going.
first couple of questions, you know? Someone, not me, I read this somewhere, don't know who to appropriate it to. The comment that writing fiction and a novel is like driving at night. You know your destination, you know where you're headed, but your headlights only illuminate 300 meters in front. So you can see the immediate future. You don't know what's in that darkness up ahead, and yet you do know where you're going. That's very much like it. So all kinds of things that you never even thought of when you sat down to start writing pop in your head when you're in the middle of the story and the middle of certain scenes. And if something doesn't, I get up, I take a stroll around the block, and it's something, maybe we all know this, you know, movement like that distracts the brain in a way that allows other stuff to pop in. And suddenly there's an idea, you know, and then you
Right.
rush back
Yeah.
home and get to the pad. And last thing I'll say, one of the reasons I do longhand first is because I'm not a trained typist, right? I'm still may at most 2 fingers each. And I have to look at the keyboard to see where the letters are. I can't look at the screen.
Yeah.
So it's very slow. And sometimes ideas pop into your head. And if you don't get them down, they're gone. You're going to lose them.
Yeah.
And maybe you know that even from songwriting. You know, you're driving somewhere and the perfect word to slip into that last line of the verse hit you. And then you get where you're going. You're, what was that word again? Ah, shoot, you know?
Yeah.
So I have learned to search for pens that move fastest across the page so I can scribble it down before it leaves my head. And then what I do, then I type it into Word. And usually it's been taking about a month to do that. But that's a chance to revise as you go and struggle as you read all the scribbles, sometimes I can't even read my own writing because I was moving too
I've
fast.
done that many a
Yeah.
time.
So there you go. Anyway, that's a bit of what it's like.
Well, I agree with you, and I sometimes I make the mistake of thinking I'll remember that word,
Yeah.
and then, as you so intimately put, you don't. You don't
Yeah,
remember the
I
word, and
know.
it is frustrating. So,
Or
And
writing in
maybe,
the middle of the night and just trying to make out in the morning what it was that you actually scribbled down.
oh,
That's
yeah, I
yeah,
have done that once or twice and get up in the morning and it's completely, indecipherable.
no,
You can't, it's
yeah.
like a scribble or a doodle. And you think
Grip,
you're so smart. I'm writing it, no
yeah,
problem. Yeah, right.
exactly. Grip, maybe we could get you to tell us a little bit about the Stradivari formula without giving too much away about the book, about
Yeah.
this roller coaster that you're going to take the reader on.
Sure, no problem. So this is about based on Stradivari, Antonio Stradivari. That's his real name. Stradivarius is the Latin version. And he did, yes, of course, he's the well-known violin maker, and it is true that his instruments were a titch better than all the other ones being made at that in those eras that overlapped with him, Guarneri and Amati and all these other famous builders. But there was something about his that were just slightly more exceptional. And people have theorized it, looking at the woods and the finish and the dimensions and everything possible, but it's still only theories. And yet, at the same time, he did make a few guitars. There are 5 of them in existence, only one playable, but there
now
are.
these are facts, right, Grit?
Oh, yeah, this is
Like this,
real
right?
stuff. That's right.
Because I,
And
in
they're in
adjacent to
museums.
Andrew's, yeah, sorry, I mean, adjacent to Andrew's question, I don't want you to lose your train of thought, but this is what I really wanted to know because you have a lot of knowledge about the facts in
Yeah.
terms of building instruments. Where did you, and again, we're not getting away from Andrew's question because I want this to be part of it. Where did you find the line between, okay, I'm going to introduce these facts. A lot of people, whether they're musicians or not, probably maybe have heard of a Stradivarius violin because it is such a phenomenal thing.
Yeah.
Hardly anybody's going to know he made 5 guitars and one is
Yeah.
still playable, and including myself. And
Yeah.
so I just when you're writing this book, and I want you to continue, but I really want you to include. Here's I put in these facts. These actually this is true, and then how do you decide? Okay, this is not going to be true, but it makes the story way more interesting. Like
Yeah.
this is
Right.
fascinating to me when
Right.
you intertwine fiction and nonfiction, like what you've done. That's
Mhm.
pretty cool.
Right. I understand what you're saying, and I do appreciate those comments. Very kind words. And so let me just finish on that point, though. Not just guitars. There are at least 2 mandolins that he made and a harp, like a
Okay.
classical harp. So my guess is, like any other luthier, he had bills to pay, and he wasn't going to say no to a commission, even though he's mostly a violin maker, right? And mostly he made violins, more than 1,000 of them. So that's his main thing, of course. But I started to get this idea. What if there really and truly was a secret to his work? And what if once somebody close to him realized, oh God, we better hide this somewhere where his competitors could never find it? And that's at the root of it. Then I spoke with chemists. I read, scientific reports, everything I could, and I came up with some plausible theories of what it could be. Of course, fictionalized, okay,
Yeah.
but don't tell anybody, okay? And but I stayed as close to reality as I possibly could, and I found out some things about the region there. That in Italy, it was the most volcanic region in all of Europe, and then I started looking at, well, what's the residue from volcanic ash that is in all the waters around Italy, and what elements could be there. And so and speaking with chemists and scientists, I got close to something that I honestly feel is a plausible potential reason, even though I stretched the truth just as much. And if your listeners can see, I'm holding my fingers only about a centimeter apart. Okay, just this much. But ironically, if I can jump around, 2 months after this book came out, a scientist in Japan said, I think I figured out why the Strad violins were so different and so good. And he started talking about his theory. And I'll tell you, it was 90% towards what I just put in this book. I couldn't believe it. I'm
That is
reading
crazy.
this, and I'm thinking, hey, no, I'm already there. What are you talking about? I figured this out already, Anyway, people will see. So that's the idea. And then the plot became, it's hidden somewhere. 2 university students in our era, or just slightly before our era, they were younger then, they're adults now, had caught a glimpse, a mention on one little document that they discovered while they were doing their doctorate in Cremona about Stradivari, and they were allowed to look through the historic documents of correspondence and stuff, and they stumble on one postscript that hints that there was a secret. And then these 2 guys, things happen, and they become, they're sort of against each other in the end. One of them really wants the truth to come out if they can find it. The other hopes they never find it because it would ruin so much if it comes out. And that's at the meat of the story. And then some innocent luthiers, guitar makers, who were tasked with repairing one of Strad's guitars for an upcoming exhibition, they stumble on this and get caught up in the hunt and the search that takes them around the world. And they get, and then violence and stuff happens. Anyway, that's the story, basically.
If you're enjoying the episode, give us a like, hit subscribe. Why don't you share us with a friend too? Now back to the scheduled episode.
So, and for those that need to know, Laskin guitars are all made with Italian volcanic ash. Just so. Now they cost a lot. We're not going to lie; they cost a lot of money. But you have to import that.
You weren't supposed to tell people. Oh no!
It's out.
You heard it here first. What makes a Laskin guitar so special? Imported Italian volcanic ash. That's where it's at, man. Right now, Collings is moving from Texas to everything.
I made a guitar for Bill Collings. Anyway, he's no longer walking the earth, but he actually ordered a guitar for me.
Did he really?
Yep. I made him a guitar. Yep.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's pretty cool.
And I've made a guitar for some of the Martin people. I've made a guitar for Roger Sadowski, the well-known sort of bass maker in New York. I've made a guitar for all kinds of people in the trade. Even the guy, believe it or not, the company that makes Ovation guitars, the plastic back, right? Which is really them searching for another thing they could do with this ABS stuff, right? And they made these guitars. It's made by the Kaman company.
Okay.
And the retired CEO of Kaman Industries commissioned me to make him a real guitar. Really,
I'm so glad I'm so glad you said it, Grit. I was going to try to be politically correct. Oh, what if
and maybe I should be too. But I mean, I know a number of players who really love them in the studio. They especially love the high end for some reason. But to me, they're not guitars. Guitars are the sound of wood vibrating, not plastic vibrating. And so more power to them if people want them, but it doesn't do anything for me.
Was it not a pivotal moment? Like I remember, because I always had that feeling too, like you, not being a luthier, but being a player. When I saw Glenn Campbell play one, I was like, what? What are you doing?
I know,
Do you remember that moment, Crit? When I can't remember. It was like it was a concert on television or something.
Yeah. I'm sure that helped their sales,
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure they gave him the guitar, but I bet, like a lot of touring artists, I'm sure you'd know this too, they keep their good guitars at home or take them in the studio. But on the road, no, they bring cheapies. They don't care if they get bashed or damaged or banged up, because they'll just get another one, So I've seen that so frequently that, and you understand it totally, especially, if you're a full-time musician and you're touring, you're moving from climate to climate and airline to airline. There's so many opportunities for things to screw up. So take a cheapie that you don't care about.
The backup guitars often come out on the road.
There you go.
Are we going to send this episode to Jason Isbell? Because I didn't see Red Eye last night, but I saw a lot of vintage guitars.
Oh yeah,
but
well, I'm saying it's not consistent, but I do see it with the with the sort of upper tier performers. You see that all the time, and even I've made beautiful instruments for some well-known people, and I never see them use it on stage.
No,
but they tell me how much they love it,
right?
And there's pictures of it on the album jacket, kind of thing,
right? So in the studio, it's a Laskin, but on the stage, it's whatever.
That's right. Yeah, when they really need the ultimate sound and they're in control, do that.
Yeah, no, fair enough. So start to finish, Grit. Start to finish from now, I guess not conception, because you said you've thought about this novel for years and years in your head, and as it unfolded. Pen to paper, start to finish. How long did it take you?
The first draft was 5 months.
Wow.
Yeah. And then a bit of editing back and forth,
Sure, pretty quick.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But it was
after years of thought, though.
Well, yeah.
There is that, but I find writing of the first draft is the creative high for me. Right. And it's even better than a song because it goes on for months, right? Yeah. There's a lot of words, right? Mm-hmm. But that used to be my creative satisfaction, is putting songs together. Yeah. And Lance, something that occurred to me when you were talking about your own songwriting, and that I'm a lyric-driven songwriter when I've written. I'm not a groove-driven guy, or maybe one or two have come out that way, kind of bluesy or something, but mostly it's the language.
Right.
And I can take months to write a song, and literally have a pad with me everywhere on my workbench. So while I'm clamping, a word occurs to me, I go over and jot it down. Or even sitting on the seat next to me in the car when I'm at a red light, if something hits me, I'm going to get that phrase down. And I've been working. No, there's a word that's going to do it better and be more efficient right there. And writing novels, it's the same thing. There isn't a single word, even, simple and or but or is or he or they, anything. Every word has a purpose. There is no extraneous words anywhere. Everyone has a role to play. And then when you go do editing, sometimes you chop down even more. You realize, no, you know what? Any human reading this, they would get your point. I don't need to explain it further over here, so we can chop that bit out,
right.
Stuff like that. Yeah. And anyway, it's a creative high that I look forward to, and I love being in the middle of it because it lasts so long.
Sure. So choosing the words is really great. It's so important. So yeah. Sorry, Andrew. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. I was just wondering, from the time that you wrote that first copy to the end, how many times did the ending change for you?
Well, actually, I had written on the Strad Formula, I had written an epilogue. Mm-hmm. What happened with the characters, after there's a major concert at the end. I don't want to ruin the story for anybody. And then I thought, well, the reader's going to wonder what's happened to people, So I wrote that, and my agents said, Grit, the chapter before concludes the story so perfectly that you're kind of ruining the ending, So let's scrap it. So we just left it out. And I thought, maybe one day I'll stick it on my website if people ever want to know what happened to those characters, And ironically, one of the novels I just finished, one of the first two, where I'm starting a series with a major character who will reappear. And I did take two characters from the Strad Formula, the apprentice guitar maker and one of the cops become regular characters here. Anyway, sorry, you know what? I digressed from my own point, and I don't remember what my point was. Welcome to my age.
Yeah, well, it's already happening now.
You know what? We were just talking about how sometimes you write an ending and it changes, and you did address that. You had the perfect ending. You added an epilogue. See, someone like me, I would appreciate that, because sometimes you're left thinking, well, I wonder what happens to that character now.
Yeah.
And so I would appreciate that. I understand your editors kind of saying no, but from a reader's perspective, like, no, I'd like to know.
But maybe that's another book in this tale.
Right.
I
They don't
think
want
so.
to.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, yeah.
just maybe
Yeah.
that's the groundwork that you're starting
Right.
right there. But like I
Yeah.
knew that you were already writing, and I can't believe that you're actually essentially another book done and the next one in the works as well too.
Yeah.
Is,
Two
is
books written.
oh yeah the
Yeah.
second one is written now as
Oh
well
yeah.
too.
But
So
literally, I finished it maybe 2-3 weeks ago. So it's
Wow.
that current. And yeah, there's some other nonsense going on. The publisher I was with got sold to a nonfiction publisher, and my
mhm,
agents didn't feel it's a place for me anymore, and they're searching for a different source. So we're in the
that makes
middle of,
sense.
you know, for a new publisher. So we'll see. It's tough these days when you're not a bestseller person or a famous human being. Yeah, in the guitar world, a lot of players would know my name, but that's not the way a book publisher looks at it. So I'm sure they'll be
Yeah.
out at some point. I'm not worried, but not at the moment. That's all.
I was
Right.
going to ask you, like throughout the writing, were there any frustrating moments that you had? Like I would say that this itself, I that's why I kind of got thinking about that is absolutely so frustrating that the new publisher they're going
Mhm.
nonfiction or that's what they were already were. But when you look at that and just think about it in a writing perspective, were there any moments that as you work through the story that you found frustrating?
Um, in every novel, I think there's moments when you've reached a point, you're happy with what you're writing, the way the story's going, and then you realize, hmm, okay, what could happen now? Could be A or B or C or D. And then you mentally, okay, let's say I do A. Okay, what are the implications of that? Where is it going to send my characters? Do I like that? Am I happy with that direction? And yeah, and you struggle with it for a bit, but literally you just give it time. And I think for any author, they just give it time and think through the implications and say, okay, no. I just thought of something, this could work. And I know for myself, whether it's writing fiction, that if I give myself, a little bit of time to just think about it, I will come up with something.
I
I've been
guess,
able to
like you
count
said
on my brain.
earlier, that you take a step away from the desk, go for a walk around the block,
Yeah.
kind of clear the
Yeah.
mind. That's that opportunity for the ideas to percolate and come back to the paper at that point.
Very much. Yeah. Whether I go for a walk or I literally pace in my room, get up off my
That
chair and
does it too.
yeah, just pace around the house or something and my wife, are you okay? Yeah. I'm just thinking. Don't worry. I'm fine.
We'll need a new
And
carpet, but
yeah. But I was going to mention just because it's a parallel in a way. When I'm making guitars and I do all the inlay art on the necks, I'm sure you're familiar with some of that.
mhm.
Yeah.
And
That's one
you
of your
may not.
things you're famous for is the
Okay,
inlay.
so there you go. And I never ever repeat the art. It's not like a fancy model from a manufacturer who makes thousands of them or something. No, it's one of, that's it. I start with a blank page every time, and usually it's pulling a theme from the player, from the customer. So it's very personal for them. But my point is that there are times when, of course, I search for the inlay art to be a visual narrative. There's a beginning and end. It's a story. And sometimes people will email me, a novel's worth of ideas of things that are important in their lives. And I have to distill it down to a single film script, basically, but capture the things that are most important for them and make it work in a narrative flow. And there are moments when I'm struggling, and what I do there is I walk away from my workbench. I go to my office. I lie down on my couch. I close my eyes and I start manipulating the images in my head. And I search for a solution. Okay, I need this human to be part of it. Okay, but I don't want to have them standing upright on the fingerboard because that's going to take up a whole lot of real estate. But if my view is from above and we're just looking down on them,
Right. Yeah.
then I can show the whole human being in this tiny bit of space, and that leaves me room to do this or that. things like that. I literally, with my eyes closed, I move the objects around, I change their angles, or I add things in, and usually I come up with a solution. But that works for me. I've been able to count on my brain, so far. Let knock on wood, but so far I've been able to count on that.
Do you find that the because your main bread and butter has been just so entrenched in creativity that helps you reach a flow state in writing? Because obviously, I mean, I know you've got 3 books now, but relative to your guitar making, you're a newer writer, and so are you able to? Because I would imagine that'd be
For
a really
fiction.
exciting time for fiction. I know, but
Yeah.
that to me would be, hey, I've got this book. I'm super excited. I'm excited to write my next one because I'm sort of I'm at the start of this journey. I guess trying to narrow down my question is the creativity that you're still able to achieve in your guitar making, does that help you hit the flow state for your writing, which is also creative? Are they connected or no?
Yeah, I'm not certain about that, to be honest, because they're all visual and the writing is all just words, so just language. So I don't think so. However, in terms of the writing, you're right. I'm newer to it now. As I said, back in the mid '90s, I did release get a young adult novel published, and there's a couple more that were written before that are still in the bottom drawer that nobody wants, right? And prior to that was short story writing that I was having fun with, that I got caught up doing until I realized, this short story, I'm already at 60 pages, and that's already too long for a short story.
Right.
Maybe I should try a novel where I've got the room to take my character somewhere. And sort of that's how it happened. But there was something in me besides the love of woodworking and being a guitar player since I was 9 years old. So combining those two was super exciting for me, of course, and still is, still is. But I also was playing with words. I mean, when we were cleaning out our basement, my wife and I recently, I'm sure we all know that, basement where junk gets thrown until you can hardly move there anymore. Anyway, I stumbled across a one-act play that I had written when I was 15. And I'm sure, it was just, me getting my teenage angst out somehow. But the point being, that's how I chose to get it out, using language. So there was something in me that liked working with words, working with language. And I've been an avid reader my whole life. Even today, I can't be without a book. I to the point where one time I was driving to the shop from home and I realized I left my book at home. I turned around and I drove back to get the book. So I have something to read at lunch.
I don't think you can be a good writer without being a good reader. I don't have proof of that. I just always thought I love to read. I don't think you can write without, because reading gives you a command of language. And so without that, I don't know how you can write.
And you've nailed it. And I'm sure because I'm an avid reader, somehow I've absorbed a sense of structure. And no, it's time. Oh, no, it's time. We need some action here, or it's time to remember, hey, what's going on with that character? Don't forget about her or him or whatever. So let's go back and see what's going on there. But at the same time, my songwriting and playing music plays a role. And in the sense that in the way, when you're putting a song together, now would be a good time for a bridge, or a chorus or something. You have an innate sense that when the listener, we need something now. Well, it's the same thing. There's been a lot of long sentences, time to change the rhythm, time to put in a couple of short ones, and things like that, or too many long paragraphs. It's time to move things more briskly before you slow down again. And I think that's for music. That's just sensing rhythm and pace, like from a songwriting. And,
well, I hope that our listeners are going to plug into to getting. I was excited for this book because I can now say I can afford a Laskin. It's not maybe the one I wanted, but
you got.
I walk around and say, "Hey, Lance, you got a bunch of guitars and a Laskin. Do you have a? I don't know. Anyway,
well, Lance, I'm saying this in public, but just because I know you'd want one, I'm going to give you $5 off right off the top without even thinking. Okay.
Without even thinking.
Yep. That's the kind of guy I am.
You know what, Grit? I'll tell you this. This is how good Grit's guitars are. I would classify Grit's guitars as what I like to call divorce guitars.
Oh,
Anyway, Grit,
I'm going to need a
yeah.
couch to say,
Yeah.
stay on sort of guitars.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Exactly. I had my wife fooled for a very short period of time saying, honey, look how old and beat up this guitar is. It couldn't have cost very much. Like, what is this? Come on. Anyway, Grant, I don't know if you've had I was going to say the pleasure, but that sounds grandiose. Anyway, if you've listened to any of our podcasts before, we finish each one with what we call a lightning round. It is an incredibly unscientific way of getting to know Grit Laskin. So we will give you a choice. Shoes or boots, and you will pick one. And there's no wrong answer. This is just getting to know you in a very quick 10-question segment. Andrew Andrew writes most of the questions. In this case, he wrote them all and runs this. So you can't get any questions wrong, but you have to choose only one answer.
Okay.
Now,
All
having
right.
said that, I'm not sure that there's actually been a guest that has been able to get through the entire list without, saying, maybe both, or there's a story that comes along with it. So if that happens, we'll give you a little bit of leeway anyway.
All right. I'm game.
All right, here we go.
Why don't we get going? Let's start off hand tools or machines,
Hand tools.
notebook or computer,
Notebook.
old wood or new wood,
Old wood.
precision or intuition,
Oh. See, in that case, I want both. Okay, I'll go intuition.
science or art,
Art.
tradition or experimentation,
Experimentation.
repairing or building from scratch,
Building from scratch.
knowing when to stop or knowing when to start,
Okay, knowing when to stop.
outline first or discover the story as you go.
Oh, see, I'm right in the middle because
See?
you have some outline, and some of the pleasure and joy is discovering as you go, and yet you have to know some, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, okay, I'm on the fence.
And our last one, write every day or write when you're ready.
For me, right when you're ready.
And that has been another episode of Backstage Lowdown.
Thanks, Grit.
Grit, thanks so much.
You did a great
really
job,
appreciate you coming out and hanging out with us for a half hour. Really enjoyed it. Loved the book.